Mr. Speaker.
Order. Questions for oral answer. Dr. Intan Azura Mokhtar.
Question 1, please, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir, prior to employing Mr. Mickey Brochet, Temasek Polytechnic and Ngee Ann Polytechnic had conducted pre-employment checks by verifying copies of Mr. Brochet's educational certificates against the originals. This is in line with the practice of the public sector as well as many private sector companies. In addition, Mr. Brochet demonstrated a good grasp of the subject during his interviews with the Polytechnic's management staff, including those with expertise in psychology. These factors led the Polytechnics to decide to hire him. While due diligence may be conducted thoroughly, there is unfortunately no system that is able to exhaustively keep out those who are out to lie and cheat. Temasek Polytechnic and Ngee Ann Polytechnic have since incorporated more stringent checks, including the verification of the educational certificates with the issuing institutions. However, there are practical limits to such checks. Some overseas institutions may not provide their confirmation, citing privacy reasons. We are also mindful of not going to the extremes and risk losing out valuable talents. Therefore, the role of in-service performance appraisal and regular monitoring is very important in our HR practices.
Dr. Intan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, SBS, for the answers. However, when I find it a bit strange that the Polytechnics check the copies with the original. So if the original is already falsified, then you're just checking a false document against another false document. So I would think that there must be a more robust process in place where the institution that is keen on hiring should check back with the institution that conferred those certificates in the first place. On top of that, there could also be a check with character referees that this potential hiree, potential employee would have worked with in the past. And my second question is whether Temasek Polytechnic allowed Mr. Mickey Brochet to set up that child psychology clinic where he had access to exceptional children through the clinic, because that was what's reported. Could MOE verify that? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank Dr. Intan for her two supplementary questions. The first one, actually, she has some queries and also suggestions. And prior to making a hire, all of 5 polytechnics, they conduct pre-employment checks by and this is in line with the public sector practice and also many companies in the private sector, which includes background check and also checking the applicants' academic qualifications against the original certificates. Now, since then, Temasek Polytechnic and Ngee Ann Polytechnics, they have since tightened their checks to verify with the issuing institutions, not just the foreign educational qualifications of the new staff, but also existing staff. So that's been done and in progress. And in addition to that, since 2014, all our 5 polytechnics conduct reference checks by checking the candidate or the applicant's previous employers or referees in the application, is indicated in the application. So on the first question, I want to assure Dr. Intan that MOE, we will continue to work closely with our 5 polytechnic to continue strengthening their recruitment process. On the second question, Mr. Brochet taught at TP for a period of 2 years, from February 2009 to January 2011. And he taught for a much shorter period of only 6 months as an adjunct lecturer in NP. And during that stint in TP, he taught 4 modules in the first year, 3 modules in the second year, only to 85 students. right? And at that point in time, TP had a cohort about 15,900 students, which means the number of students comprised represents about 0.5% of the cohort. And for the NP, the percentage of the students that he taught is actually about 1.5%. And his work is concentrated on delivering the modules. And even for those modules that the students attended, for TP, that comprised of about 10% of their graduating requirement. For MP, it's even less. It's about 3% of their graduating requirement.
Dr. Intan.
Speaker, sorry. SPS, I actually wanted to ask about the plans that Temasek Polytechnic had for him to set up a child psychology clinic within the Polytechnic. Did that go through? Did he have any part in doing that? And did he have any access to young children through that planned clinic? And second, I would urge the MOE to encourage not just the polytechnics, but also across all our educational institutions to verify the qualifications and credentials of potential employees with the institutions that confer them, as well as with character referees.
To the first question by Dr. Intan, his work was confined to delivering the modules, but let me check on that and I will come back to her. The second question, I want to assure Dr. Intan and members in the House that MOE will spare no effort to work closely with our polytechnics, our uni, and also our ITE to strengthen our pre-employment checks and also ensuring that the standard of academic rigor is kept by our educators in our institutions.